documents on your table this morning. I just wanted to mention it briefly because of the overwhelming interest in this concept of an open parliament. Open parliament is simply a form of interaction between citizens and parliament that promotes openness to ensure transparency, access to information, accountability, public participation, ethics, and probity. Now, I want to make it clear to the public that the open parliament is not an opportunity for you to come to bash the government or to bash the official opposition or to make personal attacks on any grouping or individual. It's an opportunity to be educated about the procedure and the process of Parliament. Now, this all came about as a result of a meeting that was held on the 19th of April, 2021, between the presiding officers of Antigua and Barbuda, the Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, St. Lucia, Suriname, Trinidad, and Tobago. We all felt that there was a greater need for the public to participate. So the public is advised that when the open parliament is scheduled, you can bring your grievances, you can bring your concerns, you can bring your petitions, and you would be given an opportunity to voice them as well as an opportunity to present those concerns. And also, when you come, you'll receive documents such as this, a brief history of the Parliament of the Bahamas, and another document that we have published, how laws are made, the legislative process. So that is the purpose for the open parliament, and I'm pleased with the number of youth groups who showed interest, the number of women organizations that showed interest, and just great interest across the board with respect to this new concept. And like I say, this is not just isolated to the Bahamas. All those countries that participated in this meeting in April have agreed to move along this line so that the legislative branch of government can interact more frequently and more closely with the community, with the public. Introduction and swearing in of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. Statements and communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Central Grand Bahama.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to address this House as the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture. Mr. Speaker, with your indulgence, I'd like to take just 2 minutes to offer some word of condolences thank you very much to the family of former Deputy Leader and Governor General Eddie Hanna, who was recognized in this place yesterday, and also to someone who I consider my political mother, and the person of Mrs. Sandra Moore, the wife of His Excellency Maurice Moore, was also recognized yesterday for the part that she played in my life. The prayers, the words of encouragement, the constant voice note that I was going to ask you to play this morning, but if I did play those voice notes, I believe all of us perhaps would have broken out and crying this morning, because how emotional and supportive those voice notes are. Mr. Speaker, on a more personal level, I remember in around 1976 or thereabouts, there was a movie on ABC, very popular movie called Charlie's Angels. And there's a beautiful blonde on that movie. Her name was Farrah Fawcett Major. And Farrah Fawcett Major Very beautiful lady. Yes, she's married to the $6 million man, Steve Lee Majors. And she had a good life, very good on the stage. She died, and no one even remembered it. I remember speaking to the member from Fort Charlotte. He said the worst thing that could happen to Farrah Fawcett was she died on the same day as Michael Jackson. So no one remembered that Farrah Fawcett had died because her death was overshadowed by the death of Michael Jackson. Well, Mr. Speaker, there was an angel in my life in the person of Meldora P. Lewis, who died around the same time as Sir Arthur, Sir Adriana, as well as Sandra Moore. That angel in my life did not walk the halls of Parliament, but she had 11 children, one of whom now resides in Parliament, sits in Parliament. She never sat in the cabinet of the Bahamas. She birthed 11 children, one of whom sits in the cabinet of the Bahamas. And on this day, I would like to say, thank you, Mother. Thank you, Mom, while you sit in heaven. On Sunday, as I sat in her bed, laying in her bed, I got words of encouragement. The Deputy Prime Minister, who I call my political father, and someone who's played a tremendous role in my life, called me, check upon me. And I said, EPM, I'm presently laying in bed, my mother's bed. My father died on one side of the bed, she died on the other side of the bed. I'm laying down in the bed right now watching TV. He said, Minister, I'm in my mother's house. I lay in my mother's bed. And that's where I find comfort also. So I understand exactly what you're doing. Thank you very much. About 5 minutes later, I won't hold it too long, Mr. Speaker, I got a call from North Abaco checking up on me. So I called you to talk about the Olympic team, and brother, I didn't even realize that your mother died. I'm offering you my sincere condolences. So I said to him, I'm laying right now in my mother's bed. He said to me, you're doing exactly what I did. When my mother died, I went to her bedroom in Dundas Town, and I slept on my back. And you know, that's very strange for island people, because when you sleep on your back, you believe that spirit is going to come and hide you. He said, I'm laying on my back, and I slept in peace, knowing that she was there. And then North Abaco referred me to Hebrews 12:1. And I'm so happy to be sitting in a cabinet in Parliament with colleagues who knows the Bible, who can always find the scripture, even down to Freetown. I can offer a word of encouragement by way of scripture. And he said to me, in brief, he talks about the saints who went before us in heaven, who are cheering us on. And right now I know saints like Deputy Prime Minister's mother, his mother, my son, my father, my brothers. They are there. All of us who would have lost loved ones. They are people like us who went on, and they're now enjoying sainthood, and they are praying for us, and they're cheering us on. So let us all continue to remember them and to build on what they have taught us. Speaker, the matter for which I now stand. The most important thing about the Olympic Games is not winning, but taking part. The essential thing in life is not conquering, but fighting well. Those words were penned by Pierre de Coubertin, the founder of the modern-day Olympic Games. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas is respected around the world for the abundance of world-class athletes who hail from these beautiful islands called the Bahamas. This country has been finding its way onto medal podiums from the time of Sir Dewitt Knowles in sailing and Thomas A. Robinson in track and field. These early sporting success opened doors to others that dream of emulating those very successes. Mr. Speaker, among the first to break down the imaginary door of success on the track was none other than Frank Rutherford, who in 1992 became the first Bahamian to win an Olympic medal, which he achieved at the Barcelona Games in 1992. What a proud and exciting day that was, all Bahamians far and wide. Mr. Speaker, when this door opened, our medal rush in athletics and other sports truly began. In 1996, our female team emerged and ran the 4x100 relay, striking silver at the Olympic Games in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. This outstanding medal performance was considered remarkable. Participating also in these Olympic Games, making their debut, was the men's 4x400 relay team. Again, this team surprised the world by advancing all the way to the finals. However, they received seventh overall. This point is important, Mr. Speaker, which I will come back to a little later. Who can forget the thrill of victory at the 2000 Olympics in Sydney, Australia, when our silver medalists from the 1996 Olympic Games blossomed into now what is now known as the Golden Girls? At these Olympic Games, our Golden Girls, as they became affectionately called, annihilated the competition in the 4x1 relay, which included USA poster child Marion Jones. The Bahamian euphoria around this race was one that was certainly off the Richter scale. In 2004, Mr. Speaker, Tonique Williams-Dallin emerged as our newest Golden Girl, where she captured the title in Athens, Greece. Fast forwarding to 2012, Mr. Speaker, the London Olympics in 2012 became another moment in our Olympic history where Team Bahamas emphatically confirmed itself as a global force to be reckoned with. The Golden Knights, comprised of Chris Brown, Demetrius Pinder, Michael Matthew, and the giant slayer Ramon Miller, stormed to Olympic victory in the 4x4 relay, sending the Bahamian people once again into pandemonium celebrations. At the Rio 2016 game, Mr. Speaker, the world focused on one thing, the dive. The dive that Shawnee used to snatch the limelight from the U.S. multi-Olympic champion Alexson Felix in the 400 meters. And all of the judges who judged diving in the swimming and diving competition gave her a perfect 10. Mr. Speaker, today, as an Olympian myself, I'm extremely proud to be in the position that I sit in as minister with responsibility for sports to commend our latest group of Olympians for once again demonstrating to the world why we are numero uno when it comes to sports. Mr. Speaker, a band of 14 married men and women qualified themselves to represent the Bahamas at the Olympic Games. Achieving the qualification by itself was no easy feat, particularly as the qualification standards were made even more challenging to attain this year. The team, Mr. Speaker, consisted of the following members, and I want to highlight them: Stephen Gardner, Apico, right? Not Apico. Alonzo Russell, Donald Thomas, now at the age of 37, still a force to be reckoned with. Jamal Wilson, Isaac Bastian, female Shawnee Miller-Weibo, Devin Charlton, Padria Seymour, Anthony Strawn, Megan Morse, Tanisha Anderson, Rian Bethel, Jonathan Evans. Who's got the yes, Samson Colbert. And Joanna Evans, yes. Joanna Evans in swimming, I mentioned her. Yes. The management and coach, Jerron Donaldson, head of mission. Cora Hepburn, chef de mission. Oriel Woods Knowles, deputy chef de mission. Dr. Ricky Davis, medical doctor. Cottrell Robinson, medical. Rudolph Ferguson, head coach. David Charlton, coach. Rupert Gardner, coach. Ronald Cartwright, coach. Don Johnson, coach. Andy Lovett, swimming coach. Mr. Speaker, I wish to personally congratulate each and every member of Team Bahamas. Your selection to the team is nothing short of remarkable, particularly considering the interruption you would have experienced to your training due to the rapid spread of the COVID-19 virus into a global pandemic. The Speaker, navigating the network of to satisfy travel, immigration, and event participation, verification perhaps can be an Olympic sport in itself. Without the tireless effort of a dedicated management team, our athletes would not have been able to perform as well as they did. For this reason, the management team is also congratulated for the work they did and the obstacles they overcome. It is noted, Mr. Speaker, this Olympic team was for the first time led, and this is one for the girls, but for the female, was led for the first time by a female chef de mission. The person of Cora Hepburn, and she was ably assisted by another female, Oriel Woods Knowles, both individuals are former, outstanding, and accomplished sportswomen, which explains in great part the successes experienced by the athletes. Mr. Speaker, as I turn my attention to the athletes' performance, I draw attention to the aquatics events in which we had two swimmers participate. First-time Olympian Isaac Bastian and veteran Joanna Evans gave it their best, which we are so proud of. And Joanna is a youth Olympic bronze medalist along with Henry DeLuz. I remember taking that team to Nanjing, China in 2014. In track and field, we witnessed a historic feat of having not one, but two females, Devin Charlton and Padria Seymour, qualify and advance through the rounds in the 100-meter hurdles. First-time Olympian Charlton remarkably made it to the finals, but missed the podium. Despite best efforts, our athletes did not make the medals. All of them did not make the medal podium as they had aimed for. Our medalists. The Bahamas' rich and continuous history of winning a medal at successive Olympic Games, leading off the medal charge, was none other than Stevie Gardner in the 400 meters. Clearly, in complete command of a world-class field of runners, inclusive of the world record holder and defending Olympic champion Wayne van der Klerk of South Africa and U.S. national champion and world leader Michael Norman, Stevie powered home in the season best time of 43.85 seconds for the gold. A few days later, the same day my mother died, was a bittersweet moment. Shawnee Miller Weibo was in the blocks. Having witnessed an earlier shutdown in the 200 meters, none of us knew what to expect. So I'm sure the Bahamas live up to its name as a praying nation at that time. Bang! The gun went off, and so does Shawnee. Not until the final turn did she press the gas, and away she went, observing social distancing by separating herself from the field of those that dared to challenge this Bahamian to also secure a second Olympic gold medal in a world-leading time of 48.36. No dive was required. And I can tell you, Shawnee did something that no one in history has done before. Marie Jose Perec repeated as Olympic champion, but she took 4 years. This time, Shawnee was in top form for 5 years. Absolutely. The cumulative addition of these two medals moved the Bahamas, listen to this, as the world leader in gold medals won per capita at the Olympic Games in history. 8 gold medals. There you go, bro. To ensure, now, so my government did, government contribution. To ensure the Bahamas Olympic Committee was positioned to ensure Team Bahamas' participation at the Tokyo Olympics, the government of the Bahamas, through my ministry, provided a financial grant of $100,000 to the Bahamas Olympic Committee. Normally, we would give them a grant of $50,000 for this year. So this contribution is the largest contribution to the organization ever, and we are gratified by the return on our interest. The Minister of Health, also a former Olympian, was called upon to assist with COVID-19 protocols. I made a phone call to him. He put a same in motion. Protocols requirements were taken care of. The teams were able to travel peace and comfort. I wish to thank you, Prime Minister, colleagues, cabinet colleagues, for supporting my request in terms of this team. The athletes reward, I'll briefly touch on that before I take my seat. Mr. Speaker, we are guided by the current policy of incentive awards to our medal performing athletes. But I wish to highlight, because there's a misnomer about what we do for our athletes as a government. I wish to highlight the comparison of other countries with respect to their medals. Jamaica awards their gold medalists $10,000. Usain Bolt, with 3 gold medals, walk away with $30,000. Australia offers, and I'm going to get to the US, Australia offers $15,000 for gold medal, $11,000 for silver, $7,000 for bronze. Great country, Canada, this is all US dollars, $16,000 for gold, $12,000 for silver, $8,000 for bronze. The great South Africa, $37,000 for gold, 19,000 for silver, 7,000 for bronze. The United States of America, 37,500 for gold. Go through this slowly. 22,500 silver, 15,000 for bronze. The Bahamas, 40,000 for gold, 30,000 for silver, and 15,000 for bronze. Japan offers a little more. They offers 45,000 for gold, 18 for silver, 9,000 for bronze. However, cumulatively, they offer 72,000. The Bahamas offers 85 when you look at gold, silver, and bronze. So we are on top of the world when it comes to what we do for our athletes. Though we are guided by the policy, the government is exploring in what other ways we can demonstrate our appreciation of the magnitude of the accomplishments of our athletes. I'll speak to infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, today, I'm delighted to announce that the Cabinet of the Bahamas has also successfully concluded the necessary approvals needed to complete the infrastructural work at Olympia Heights, the site of the properties where our top athletes have been gifted. I'm here to apologize for a bit because it took so long for us to get it done. But I can proudly say that this matter, through this cabinet, has been finally resolved. My ministry has begun early planning celebrations for the athletes upon their return. Some have gone. That's exactly what he's saying, that infrastructure has been approved. We're putting in the roads, we're putting in the light, we're putting in the water. So they can get to the land and they can build. And we'll apologize to Ramon Miller, who built his house. He's operating off a generator. We understand the urgency of it, and the girls couldn't build. So we decided, as a government, to put the infrastructure in place, and they can now build their homes in Golden Heights. Planning for the celebration. My ministry has begun early planning celebrations for the athletes upon their return. Some have gone on to other competition, while others have returned to school. We will therefore attempt to have as many of them available where the country can collectively express their well wishes. A date for this will be announced at a later time. In the interim, our two golden athletes, along with one or two others, will touch down tomorrow at the Linden Finland International Airport around 12 noon, where they will be warmly greeted with the sounds of Junkanoo and waving flags. Immediately after a very brief press conference, the athletes will be whisked away for a courtesy call on the Governor General as per protocol and to the Most Honorable Prime Minister. Like I said, we will be organizing that event, a motorcade later on, because due to the fact that most of the athletes will not be here and pending inclement weather on Friday, predicted to be some 85+% rain, we'll push that off for a better time, another time. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I congratulate the Bahamas Olympic Committee, led by Romel Fish-Knowles, for its efforts in preparing the athletes for competition at this level. Central American and Caribbean Games are examples of other competitions under responsibility of the BOC, which athletes will have been provided with the opportunity to measure or sharpen their skills, then return to base to make further improvements. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas Association of Athletic Association, and that is the CEO of that organization is Ms. May Miller, the mother of Shawnee Miller-Weibo, with my ministry's assistance, sought multiple competition for its athletes to qualify, and the Bahamas Aquatics Federation, headed by Mr. Arjunan Kagal, the ability to have two athletes represented in a fantastic accomplishment and will not have been possible without the supportive professionals within the organization. We have noted each of your efforts and encourage you to continue to keep the athletes' interests at the center of your plan. Sports is strong in the Bahamas and getting stronger. We are sports power, and according to our First Minister of Sports, the Bahamas, when it comes to sports, is numero uno. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order that the communication be brought up. Order that the communication do lie on the table. Further statements and communications by ministers. Further statements and communications by ministers. Communications by the clerk. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the Senate. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign, seat, and new writs. Presentation of petitions. Presentations of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committees. First reading of bills. Second reading and committal of bills. Committee of the whole House. Third reading and passing of bills. Consideration of Senate amendments. Resolutions. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at the end of the debate, I would refer and read the first and last paragraph of the resolution. But, Mr. Speaker, may I begin my contribution on extending the emergency orders for a final time with the following important announcement. Yesterday evening, the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPA, informed the government of the Bahamas that tomorrow, Thursday, August 12th, the Bahamas will receive 128,700 doses of the Pfizer vaccine donated by the government of the United States of America. Mr. Speaker, these vaccines would arrive here in New Providence by flight at 1:30 p.m. tomorrow. And Mr. Speaker, this 128,700 doses of vaccine represents the first tranche of the total 397,000 doses that we would receive from the government of the United States of America. I thank the U.S. government for this generous donation, including the assistance of the U.S. Embassy here in Nassau. I also thank CARPA, our regional public health partner, for facilitating this donation. It is important to note, Mr. Speaker, that the Pfizer vaccine will also be available to 12 to 17-year-olds with the consent of a parent or guardian. I advised in my national address on Monday that we had concluded negotiations to bring in a substantial number of new vaccines. Along with the doses we will receive tomorrow, the vaccine supply we already received and other doses on the way over the next weeks and months, we will have the capacity to vaccinate all Bahamians and residents who wish to receive the vaccine. Mr. Speaker, our vaccine supply will allow us to give a significant percentage of our population protection, and this will in time lessen the likelihood that we will have a large-scale surge that causes extremely high hospitalization. The arrival, Mr. Speaker, of these vaccines is extraordinary news. It is some of the best news we have received during this pandemic. Indeed, Brother Simmons. I'm Brother Simmons. Mr. Speaker.
Hey, Brent, I was keeping that. That's what's in the fridge.
Mr. Speaker, this is a part of the hope my government has been working toward for many months. With regard to vaccines, we are nearing the full capacity to bring much of the emergency period of the COVID-19 pandemic to an end. We now have even more compelling hope in the midst of this most difficult surge and stage of the pandemic. The Speaker, our team distributing and delivering the jobs and assisting are mostly volunteers. They have been working extremely hard during the last 7 months. I must congratulate them, but if we are as a nation to succeed as quickly as possible, we need more volunteers. I ask more Bahamians to volunteer so that they can do their part in assisting to eradicate this pandemic that we are facing and to aid our fellow Bahamian brothers. I send a notice out to various lodges and other organizations to please volunteer your services so that we can complete our mission as quickly as possible. And for those who want to volunteer, they can contact Mr. Barry Rassen by email at barryjrassen@gmail.com. I repeat, those who want to assist the Bahamas in the vaccination program can contact Barry Rassen at barryjrassen@gmail.com or Mr. Ed Fields at etonyfields@gmail.com. I repeat, Mr. Ed Fields at etonyfields@gmail.com. At this particular moment, your country needs you. Mr. Speaker, may I now reiterate some of the key points from my national address this past Monday. A year and a half into the COVID-19 pandemic, the world is facing what appears to be the worst variant of the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus. It has swept across the globe, wreaking havoc in country after country, continent after continent. It is causing surging cases in quick time, resulting in record hospitalization and many deaths. Parts of North America are dealing with surges. Countries in the Caribbean have had to impose new restrictions to combat increased cases. The variant has hit Southeast Asia particularly hard, with cases in some countries soaring to record numbers. Parts of Africa and Europe are battling increased virus transmission. We do not yet have official confirmation that more contagious Delta variant is here. But out of an abundance of great caution, we must assume that our recent surge is part of the same battle being faced in other countries. As in many other countries, Mr. Speaker, including regional neighbors, we are now experiencing historic numbers in this pandemic. In the past few weeks, we have experienced a significant increase in cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. More of us know someone sick with this COVID virus. More of us know someone battling for his or her life in hospital. And sadly, more of us know someone who has died from this disease. This is a difficult and painful time for so many families. And this surge has taken our public health care system to its limits. Mr. Speaker, it was the intention of my government that depending on the state of the pandemic, we would move toward concluding the use of the emergency orders this month and to transition to a new legislative framework as more Bahamians were vaccinated. The surge in new cases, hospitalizations, and deaths has required us to temporarily adjust our plans in order to immediately save Bahamian lives and to protect our economy. My government, Mr. Speaker, has set a plan to further combat this wave and to transition the country to a new post-emergency orders regime after this deadly surge subsides. As a result of the arrival of new vaccine supplies, including the 128,700 doses due to arrive tomorrow, we will be able to begin the transition process away from the emergency orders. And today, I wish to restate that my government is seeking the approval of Parliament for one final extension of the emergency orders. This will be the last extension of these orders. After approval by Parliament, I note that the emergency orders will end at the very latest on Saturday, November 13th, 2021. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, I tabled for consultation the new proposed legal regime for the Bahamas with the end of the emergency orders. The bill tabled is the Public Health Emergency Preparedness and Management Bill 2021. And let me emphasize that this is only a draft. It is not the final bill. We seek the contributions and advice of the official opposition. We seek the input of the religious community, businesses, NGOs, labor unions, other organizations, and individuals, so we can make the legislation as comprehensive and as effective as possible. We look forward to the contributions of the Bahamian people. Again, I emphasize that the bill is only being tabled for consultation. Mr. Speaker, a total of 1,689 doses were administered in the Bahamas, of which 1,225 or 73% were first doses and 464 or 27% were second doses. Mr. Speaker, if you were to drive by the vaccine centers, you would note that the centers and Bahamians are reporting in droves. And I want to reassure and reconfirm to the Bahamian populace that we will have sufficient vaccine for each and every individual so that they can be protected. These were doses administered in New Providence and Grand Bahama yesterday. There are over 7,500 appointments available and booked for this week for New Providence and Grand Bahama. And Mr. Speaker, I've been advised that it is our intention to try and obtain a goal of at least, with the volunteers, and I'm certain that the Bahamians hear my voice, we need every man on board. With the volunteers, we would be able to achieve and would attempt to achieve 3,000 per day. And Mr. Speaker, if we achieve that, which I am certain we will, we would see that the hospitalization should plateau and commence coming down. I wish to remind residents of these islands that walk-up appointments are available at the Church of God of Prophecy on East Street and St. Anselm's Parish on Bernard Road on New Providence, and the Susan J. Wallace Community Center on Grand Bahama. As of yesterday, the 10th of August, the Bahamas had administered a total of 111,305 doses of vaccine. In due course, we will make a number of announcements on the rollout of additional vaccines, including the Pfizer vaccine. Let me note, Mr. Speaker, one other public health measure. Bimini. Because their case numbers have improved, the curfew hours for Bimini are being moved from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., as is the case on New Providence and Grand Bahama. And this is effective immediately. Effective today, Wednesday 11th, so Bimini would advance from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. in keeping with Grand Bahama and New Providence. Mr. Speaker, in most democratic countries, national constitutions provide for emergency powers, and wisely, our founding fathers did likewise. They recognized there would be emergency periods when such measures were needed to protect the Bahamian people. And throughout the course of this terrible and deadly pandemic, governments around the world have utilized and applied an extraordinary range of emergency measures to protect and to save the lives of its citizens. This includes unprecedented health, social, economic, and public safety measures. And my government did the same. We learned from other countries and from the history of previous pandemics. We adopted what we thought was the best practice for the Bahamas. We did so in consultation with public health officials at home and international experts. In some democratic countries used certain restrictive measures for even much longer periods of time. The Bahamas, Mr. Speaker, was mightily blessed and fortunate to have the expertise of Dr. Mercelin Dahl-Regis, one of the region's leading experts in epidemiology and public health. And like our Olympic gold medalists and other world champions, Dr. Dahl-Regis is world-class and a Bahamian champion. The COVID-19 pandemic remains an unprecedented modern history emergency. It is the worst global pandemic since the 1918 flu pandemic. The COVID-19 worldwide pandemic resulted in an unprecedented economic collapse, the likes of which we have not experienced since the Great Depression of the 1920s. It was significantly worse than the Great Recession of 2008. And Mr. Speaker, the former U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, Lawrence Summers, noted last year that, and I quote, the COVID-19 pandemic will exact a 16 trillion toll on the U.S., 4 times the cost of the Great Recession when adding the cost of lost lives and health to the direct economic impact, end quote. International tourism, the lifeblood of our economy, came to an abrupt and grinding halt during the pandemic. And in spite of the challenges, the economic challenges we faced, and what was happening around the world in terms of the massive layoffs of citizens of various countries, Mr. Speaker, we made the decision not to lay off anybody here in the public service or within employed in government sector. Mr. Speaker, we thought that was important because we had to look at the human element. Had we laid off individuals in the public sector, Bahamas Air, or Nassau Flight Services, how would they have paid their rent? How would they have paid their mortgages? They would have lost homes. How would they have paid their electricity? Their kids would not be able to be fully educated by virtual. How would they pay their water bills, Mr. Speaker? What about their kids off in school receiving higher education? They too would have had to leave school. How would they have paid their car bills? Mr. Speaker, it would have been a massive economic meltdown here in the Bahamas. The government, looking at the human element and as compassionate as it is, decided that it was best to ensure that every Bahamian, regardless of how difficult and hard times we were experiencing, it was essential that they maintain their dignity and we kept them afloat. And through all this, Mr. Speaker, our foreign reserve remains stable. Our dollar remains stable. And our economy is rebounding. While the 9/11 terrorist attack in the United States of America caused severe economic pain, the COVID-19 pandemic was much worse by a considerable magnitude for the Bahamas. The synchronized global economic meltdown caused the COVID-19 brought the world to its knees. Our economic and government revenue collapsed precisely at the time when there was a need for huge sums of money to take care of public health care needs and the social needs of Bahamians. My government had to fight every day, week after week, to maintain a balance between public health interventions and preserving the economy so that Bahamians could earn a living. We are fighting still, Mr. Speaker, to maintain this balance. We provided historic amounts of food aid and unemployment assistance to those in need due to severe economic problems caused by the pandemic. We articulated and executed the Resilient Bahamas Plan. As a part of this plan, tens of millions of dollars were spent in the healthcare sector to address the health and safety needs of Bahamians throughout our country. We recently added an additional $7 million to boost the capacity of our healthcare system. Hundreds of millions of dollars were spent to give food to those requiring assistance, to provide extended and direct cash support for those who lost their jobs because of COVID-19, to cover the payroll of over 14,000 Bahamians during the worst of the pandemic, to enable them to keep their existing jobs. Our plan also worked to ensure economic and monetary stability as we navigated this most difficult period in our modern history. As a result, our foreign reserves remain at near record highs of just over $2.6 billion. Through the worst of economic times, our Bahamian dollar remains strong. During the pandemic, Mr. Speaker, we left no stones unturned. We went big. We were bold. We went big. We borrowed what the country needed, despite unconvincing and at times seemingly insincere criticism by some. Just as in most countries in the world, we kept our economy alive through necessary public spending. No public offices were laid off. We made the big and right decisions. We kept faith with the Bahamian people. Mr. Speaker, we acted quickly and decisively in the Bahamas to save lives and livelihoods. The Bahamas was one of the first countries in the world to make mask wearing mandatory. And hence, we built a new industry, a new multi-million-dollar industry. Even as some countries and jurisdictions have removed mask requirement, we are still using this measure. We know that wearing masks properly and consistently early prevents infection and saves lives when properly used. Before there were effective vaccines, the world had to use emergency measures like masks, social distancing, quarantines, curfews, lockdowns, and other measures. And without the emergency orders, many more Bahamians would have gotten sick and subsequently died. This was a clear choice, Mr. Speaker, between life and death. Throughout most of human history, before the invention of vaccines, such public health measures were the primary ways to save lives. And from the outset of the pandemic, governments in the Caribbean, the Americas, Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Pacific all used some mixture of these emergency measures and orders. Many countries in the world currently have even more stringent emergency measures than the Bahamas does at this particular time. And some countries have been in perpetual lockdowns for nearly 2 years. A major city in one Commonwealth country is in its 7th lockdown. Government and opposition parties often cooperate in passing various emergency orders. In some countries, there was considerable cooperation. While there was some cooperation by the official opposition at the outset, for the most part, the leader of the opposition and the PLP were, in my view, mostly uncooperative. While the country was trying to reach for its finest and best hours to defeat this deadly disease, the PLP appeared to reach for its lowest and its worst hours. This is a shameful period, Mr. Speaker, in the history of the PLP. It is a shameful period for a party that boasts of its nationalist credentials, but demonstrated some of its worst instincts when the country deserved more and was in peril and in great need. Only the most reckless and irresponsible individuals would recommend the removal of measures that save lives. Only the most reckless and irresponsible would ignore the medical advice and instead play politics with people's
The
lives.
chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador on a point of order.
Is ascribing to the official opposition and also me, I think, that I recommended the removal of measures that will save lives. I asked him to demonstrate whenever anyone on this side seek to have any measures reversed, right, that they have put forward to save lives. And I asked either be demonstrated or withdraw it. And also, Mr. Speaker, I think he went on to say that we were recommending
Honorable member.
we were recommending is that the medical advice not be followed. Mr. Speaker, please have the member establish that or have it withdrawn, Mr. Speaker.
At the end of the day, they'll finally agree with the measures, with the orders. Because the orders, the opposition, Mr. Speaker, in this parliament, the opposition had not supported the orders.
Yeah,
And the orders, Mr. Speaker,
Honorable member for Kalani, the point of order raised by Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador with respect to the assertions that he attributed to you. Are you satisfied that what he said is correct?
no, Mr. Speaker, I think the leader of opposition is quite, I don't want to use the word confused because he will challenge me on that word. But I think, and I don't want to use the word post-COVID syndrome, he would challenge me on that word. But Mr. Speaker, I think they gather what I'm saying. Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member for Cat Island,
Speaker,
can you make it plain?
from a medical perspective, allow me to just clarify something. From a medical perspective, you did not vote.
Remember that Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
You're not voting
Honorable members,
of the advice of the medical professionals.
That's right.
honorable members.
Mr. Speaker, the members suggested that the members over here recommended that measures that save lives ought not to be implemented or put in place. And that was an assertion that we were promulgating and promoting. That is what the member is saying and giving the impression of. We are asking him to point to when and where we would have done such a thing. Or withdraw it.
Honorable member for Kalani, can you point?
Mr. Speaker, and any suggestion about post-COVID syndrome?
No, I didn't say you have it. Let me explain. I
don't need to explain.
No,
Mr. Speaker.
Allow me to explain to the Bahamian populace what effect they can experience post-COVID. It has been shown by some researchers that as many, Mr. Speaker, I am speaking to the Bahamian populace.
Member down. You directing.
Honorable members, honorable member for Kalani, the member for Cat Island has alleged that you, that you represented to the parliament that the official opposition had recommended were against measures. Can you
What I said clearly.
substantiate that?
The member did not vote for the orders. The orders represent the recommendation of the medical professionals. In your own words, you felt that the orders, let me quote, Philip Brave Davis said
Honorable member,
yesterday that measures announced by the Prime Minister to curb the spread of COVID in the Bahamas are meant to punish Bahamians. It was not meant to punish, it was meant to save lives.
Honorable member, wait just a minute. Honorable member for Kalani, can you, the quote that you just referred to, what is the source and the date?
The source, Nassau Guardian, we copy it, we have it copied and table it. Davis new restrictions meant to punish Bahamians, October 8, 2020. Rachel Scott, but we would copy it.
Honorable member for Cat Island.
That does not support the statement made and assertion made by the member, Mr. Speaker. Right, Mr. Speaker, I am of the view that there are measures that are meant to punish Bahamians. And I can identify them if he wishes me to do so. There are measures that he put in place, Mr. Speaker, but at no time have I ever suggested that measures that save lives are not to be implemented. And that's the assertion he's making, and that is what I wish to be withdrawn.
Honorable member for Kalani.
Mr. Speaker, I will draw nothing. The member has his day to speak. He has 30 minutes, and you can speak, and we will rebuttal and show and prove where you are wrong. You would remember that when we wanted to close the bars, you wanted the bars to be opened.
What we were demonstrating is how this government, as has been their governing over the last 4 years, catered to special interests. They allowed one bar owned by a specific donor of theirs out there in Life and Community open, while others over the hill remain closed. And the question was raised, Mr. Speaker, as to why there are special rules for people in certain areas of certain ink and those over here, over the hill not. And that was the position. And that's what they embrace. So because I raised the question, Mr. Speaker, I raised the question because I produced the receipts when the bars were open. His response was that the bar was part of a hotel. It was not a part of the hotel. That is what I'm just showing how hypocritical they are and who they are catering to. They're not catering to ordinary Bahamians. It's not the people's time. It's his and his cronies' time.
Honorable members.
I responded to the member before with respect to what the member is talking about.
Let me hear him. Yes,
I said no.
Again, that I am not for measures that save lives or strike upon best record, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member for Kalani, are you prepared to withdraw the allegation?
Allow me to repeat. I will withdraw nothing. The member has 30 minutes when he speaks to clarify himself, and I will rise and show where he's wrong again. And he insisted that we were punishing the Bahamian people while we were only trying to save lives.
Honorable member, with respect to the objection on a point of order by the member for Cat Island, Ramkey, and Salvador, honorable member for Kalani, you raise other issues, but not particularly with respect to the assertion being attributed to you by the member for Cat Island with respect to the issue of the leader of the opposition or the opposition recommending that measures that save lives be discontinued in effect. That is the issue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me be very clear so the Bahamian people can understand. I'm speaking to them. The order clearly required people to wear masks. You voted against it. So you were saying no.
Honorable member, this back and forth is going on for too long. Let me just make a ruling. I'm making a ruling. Honorable. Honorable members, honorable member for Cat Island. Honorable member. Honorable member. With respect to the statement that the official opposition and the leader of the opposition recommended discontinuance of measures that can save people's lives, the chair ruling is that that statement be expunged from the record. It can be presented in terms of the other allegations, but that specific statement was not substantiated.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to shift gears of medical knowledge. Research have shown that some instances as high as 33% or 1/3 of individuals who have COVID would experience what we call post-COVID syndrome. Others call it long haulers, but post-COVID syndrome. What that means that 3 months afterward, individuals may experience lethargy, lifelessness, tired, forgetfulness, sometimes disorientation, and that may go on. I'm not saying you have it. I'm not saying you have it. Time will tell. Time will tell. I didn't say you have it. No, it's not funny. It's a medical fact. It's a medical fact. And I think people need to know that. Mr. Speaker, we have continued. No. I'm going to wait for, I don't want to use up my time. Mr. Speaker, we have continued to ask Parliament for authorization as allowed in our Constitution and laws. We have only utilized necessary rules to keep Bahamians and residents safe. We are here to save lives, not games or to plunder. My government follows the science. We make policy with our public health advisors. Our public health experts have briefings in which they share the science with the entire country. The virus changes the situation constantly. As governments, we have to keep adapting to the new realities before us. We have to be agile and adjust policies as the virus changes the circumstances. When virus circulation decreases, we are able to loosen with less restrictions. And no one likes restrictions. However, when the virus is resurgent or a new variant of concern emerges, governments have to tighten up requirements in order to beat back a potential wave. And I want to remind the Bahamian populace that at present there are about 6 variants out there that are being observed and monitored, and therefore I ask them to report as quickly as possible for vaccination so that we can possibly combat these additional 6 variants that are out there and may possibly enter our shores. Certain restrictions, Mr. Speaker, help to suppress waves by enforcing distancing between people. For example, if there were no curfews and no rules, people could be out until 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning in crowded nightclubs spreading the virus. With a curfew, people are at home. Their contacts are limited to just the people at their respective homes for those hours. The curfew enforces physical distancing from others. Mr. Speaker, I wish to encourage each member of this chamber to get vaccinated. Each of us was elected to the House of Assembly by the people to represent them. and we all love our country. I invite members to get vaccinated to protect themselves and others. I also ask each member of Parliament to aggressively spread the word to get their constituents vaccinated. When we speak, we should encourage vaccinations. When we campaign, we should encourage vaccinations. We should use our platforms on social media and otherwise to encourage our people to take the shots as quickly as possible. I will take the united urging of all of us. It will take the united urging of all of us to get our vaccination level high and to break the back of this pandemic. As elected officials, we must be unified with the let's get vaccinated message. There's so much fake news and misinformation out there confusing our people. And this fake news is killing people because it is scaring them from taking the vaccine. As the people's elected representatives, we must be strong in our collective voice, encouraging Bahamians to take the shots to save their lives. Our words of and support could be the deciding factor in shifting some from hesitancy to getting protected. Mr. Speaker, the battle we were in and in which we remain required material weapons such as masks, medical weapons such as vaccines and other pharmaceuticals, public safety measures such as enforcement, social measures such as food assistance, and economic measures such as unemployment assistance and business grants and loans. Emergency orders allowed for these life-sustaining and life-enhancing measures. But there were other tools, weapons, measures, and instruments we needed during these long and trying months that were not material. We needed spiritual weapons, like the fruit of the Spirit, including love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and most of all, self-control. We need virtues, Mr. Speaker, like discipline, foresight, courage, prudence, a commitment to social justice and resilience. We needed the master gifts from Almighty God of hope and faith. Fortified by all these measures, these virtues, these fruits of spirit, and these gifts of faith, we will triumph and we will overcome. Though we have many difficult days and long nights ahead, the arrival of more vaccines and the huge numbers of Bahamians coming forward to get vaccinated mark a new phase in the pandemic. Despite the present moment, there is compelling and audacious hope on the horizon. We will not yield, Mr. Speaker. We will not falter until this battle is won. I support the resolution extending the emergency orders for a final time. Mr. Speaker, I ask again, all Bahamians, lodges, and other organizations, your country needs you. We need all on board. The existing volunteers are tired, exhausted, but still carrying on because they put their country before self. We need others to come forth. Be you professional or non-professional, be you gardener or landscaper, we can find something for you to do. The more volunteers we have, the sooner we can get our economy back to where it was. And we can move our economy even further. So, let us all volunteer. The country needs you. I want to send out condolence, my colleague, cabinet colleague, Aaron Lewis, whose mother passed away. Condolence to he and his entire family. I also want to send condolence to Maurice Moore and his family on the passing of his wife. And condolence to the family of Haywood Cooper on the passing of Haywood Cooper in Grand Bahama. Haywood Cooper's son, who was a physician and who had passed away, and I were training together. We were doctors together, and I send condolence to that family. Speaker, may God continue to bless each and every one of us, and may God continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Whereas, pursuant to Article 29(1) of the Constitution, the Governor General may make a proclamation of emergency declaring that a state of public emergency exists in the Bahamas for the purpose of that article. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the House, A, approves the continuance in force of the proclamation made on the 14th day of May 2021 until the 13th day of November 2021. B, affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Regulations 2021 made on the 14th day of May 2021 until the 13th day of November 2021. C, affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery No. 2 Order 2021 made on the 22nd day of June 2021 until the 13th day of November 2021. And finally, D, affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Special Provisions Order 2021 made on the 16th day of May 2021 until the 13th day of November 2021. Mr. Speaker, I so move.
Is there a seconder? Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What a powerful message of audacious hope, progress that speaks to us winning the future for the Bahamian people. And Mr. Speaker, I stand to second that motion and to add to what the Honorable Prime Minister has said. The Prime Minister has tasked me to get more down into the details of our response, Mr. Speaker, and I will seek to do just that. Mr. Speaker, I arise today in this honorable house giving praise to Yahweh Elohim, the Lord of life, the Lord God Almighty, for in him we live, move, and have our being. Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity, as I'm always fond of doing, to thank the wonderful, gracious people of that great constituency of Bamboo Town who have sent me to this place by the will of the good Lord. And while I continually value their voice, I am really here to consistently give voice
to their values. Mr. Speaker, my work here today in this House, to the glory of the good Lord and on behalf of the people of Bamboo Town, and by extension, the people of this great nation, is to second this most needed resolution to extend the emergency powers, the emergency orders and the powers therein. But Mr. Speaker, before I get into the substance of my contribution, let me offer my sincere condolences to my aunt, Rosamond Wells, who lost her daughter, my dear cousin, Pamela Wells, who died at PMH as a result of the COVID-19 infection on Sunday morning. The entire Wells clan grieves Pam's loss. May her soul rest in peace and rise in glory. Mr. Speaker, let me also offer my sincere condolences to my colleague and friend, the Minister for Youth, Sports and Culture, Hiram Lewis, on the passing of his dear mother, whom I have come to love as well. As many of you would know, me and Hiram traveled the world for decades together as Olympic and World Championship athletes representing the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, I offer condolences to the Honorable Maurice Moore as well on the passing of his dear wife, Sandra, a woman who, as she did for Hiram, helped to counsel me over the past 5 years of my political career. Mr. Speaker, she will be sadly missed. Mr. Speaker, let me also offer my condolences to the family of a great Bahamian, the father of our nationalistic spirit, the most honorable Arthur Dion Hanna. His ideals, Mr. Speaker, helped to shape my thoughts as a young man. As I accompanied my father to the domino games my father loved to attend with A.D. Hanna at their meeting place atop Hawkins Hill. Many nuggets of wisdom and history flowed over a game of dominoes with A.D. Hanna, and I felt fortunate to have been the recipient of such wisdom and knowledge. Mr. Speaker, may his soul and may the souls of the faithfully departed rest in peace and rise in glory. Mr. Speaker, we are a people of manifest destiny, a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people. Mr. Speaker, in the midst of our current national challenges, Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas has much to celebrate. As the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture would say, as we watched our Olympians perform admirably in their various disciplines at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. Our national anthem was played twice as our two gold medalists, Stephen Gardner and Shawnee Miller-Weibo, stood on the pinnacle of the dais. We celebrated them vigorously. It was a special reminder that beyond challenges and adversity, with discipline, there is much success. Mr. Speaker, we are a people currently facing some challenges. It has been 16 months since the global pandemic, as was declared, and the world continues to contend with this seemingly unrelenting virus. Globally, there has been more than 200 million cases of COVID-19, and unfortunately, the disease has caused over 4 million deaths. Countries the world over have been calling and taking on their emergencies and reemergence as epicenters of the pandemic at different times over the infection period. Mr. Speaker, though we have been challenged as a nation, and the Prime Minister has spoken about so much hope, I take the liberty to paraphrase Clement Bethel's words that were penned, words for times like these, when he said, when the road seems to be a little rough, when we think we've borne enough, don't faint, don't cry, wonder why. Just keep on trying. Yes, Mr. Speaker, but we must and we will persevere, as the Prime Minister has said. This Bahamian nation, the Bahamian people, this government will keep on keeping on. And we will never give up, Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister said. We will continue to win the future for our people, ensuring that tomorrow will be a brighter day. Mr. Speaker, our track record speaks for itself. The detailed plan of action that was implemented by the Ministry of Health flattened both the first and second waves of COVID-19 in our country. It was not easy, but we did it. In the same way, Mr. Speaker, we will flatten this third wave again with our vaccines and public health measures. For indeed, Mr. Speaker, this Free National Movement government knows well how to flatten waves. Mr. Speaker, to date, the Bahamas has conducted more than 1,500 RT-PCR tests and over 500,000 antigen tests for COVID-19. When last we debated a resolution to extend the emergency powers orders, three short but long months ago, it was absolutely not the plan, as the Prime Minister said, to return to this place to seek a further extension. At that time, our COVID-19 report for the previous day confirmed 53 new cases, bringing the total number of confirmed cases at that time to 11,278. There were 48 COVID-19 patients in hospital and 5 in the intensive care unit. The total number of confirmed COVID-19 deaths at that time stood at 221. Mr. Speaker, our national circumstance has changed since that time. Since that report to the House, we have confirmed another 4,637 cases, such that as of Monday, the 9th of August 2021, there were 15,915 confirmed cases for the Bahamas. On that date, 121 new cases were confirmed. On Friday past, we published a record high of 228 new confirmed cases. Currently, Mr. Speaker, our hospitalization stands at 134 with 10 persons in ICU. And unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, our deaths now stand at 308 with an additional 38 remaining under investigation. Mr. Speaker, the high number of 228, we sort of expected that we would have gotten a high number at that time. Oftentimes, it has been observed in the ministry that after we would have come out of a public holiday, because labs are shut down and persons do not have access to testing, that usually about 3 or 4 days down the road, the numbers are high. And if you would go back to the specific numbers, you would see that after the holiday of Monday, on Tuesday, there was 150 tests. On Wednesday, there was 320 tests. And on Thursday, we had 630 tests, of which the number 228 was derived. Mr. Speaker, as has been the situation at various times in the past, multiple islands are currently reporting increases in new cases on weekly and oftentimes daily basis. New Providence continues to record the highest percentage of cases, followed by Grand Bahama in a distant second, followed by Eleuthera, Exuma, Abaco, and Bimini. Mr. Speaker, all COVID-19 indicators are trending up slightly. The data demonstrate that for the 6 consecutive weeks, beginning the 13th of June and ending the 31st of July 2021, the average daily new COVID-19 cases has sustained increases by a rising number of 83.6 points. This was the same average recorded at the peak of our second wave in the week of October the 11th, 2020. As to the moving average, my ministry diligently tracks this indicator, and nationally, it has shown increasing trends again over the past week. Mr. Speaker, the positivity rate has climbed from a low of 3% in February of this year to 21% today, which far exceeds the 5% or less desired state recommended by the World Health Organization. Mr. Speaker, at this juncture, I must say that although my ministry publishes RT-PCR positive tests, I can confirm that the positive cases from rapid antigen tests are also increasing. These numbers, Mr. Speaker, we would like for those who are carrying out rapid antigen tests, Mr. Speaker, we've observed that there are a number of sites where persons are carrying out unauthorized antigen testing. We employ all sites and facilities that are carrying out rapid antigen tests to please seek authorization from the ministry by emailing that request to the Chief Medical Officer at bahamas.gov.bs. The process to online authorization then begins. I will say that again, Mr. Speaker, for those sites, and we've sent letters already to a number of sites, for those sites that seek authorization, please contact the Chief Medical Officer, lowercase, at bahamas.gov.bs. Mr. Speaker, from an absolute perspective, the first wave lasted 16 weeks and claimed 11 lives. The second wave lasted 34 weeks and claimed 170 lives. We are now into the 23rd weeks of the third wave, and already 126 lives have been lost. For a percentage perspective, deaths during this wave thus far represents 41% of the total COVID-19 death burden. The case fatality rate of this wave currently is at 1.9%, not far below the 2.1% that we observed during the second wave. This modest decline, though, Mr. Speaker, we believe this positive effect happens to be as a result of an ongoing vaccination deployment among our residents. Mr. Speaker, on another note, we have been pleading with residents to collect the remains of their deceased loved ones from the morgue at PMH. The overcrowding, Mr. Speaker, is not due to COVID-19 deaths, but rather to individuals waiting for what they deem a more appropriate time to bury their loved ones. There are currently 260 bodies at the morgue. I want to say that again. It is not due to COVID-19 deaths, but we have 260 bodies at the morgue whose ordinary carrying capacity, Mr. Speaker, is 75 persons. To assist this dilemma, PHA secured refrigerated trailers to increase the capacity to 170 persons, and that is insufficient. I urgently implore our people to come so that they may bury their loved ones. If the current state of affairs continues, the government will take the legal means it has used and employed in the past to alleviate this circumstance. Mr. Speaker, given our current COVID-19 national pandemic profile, now is not the time to relax measures. While tightening measures may not have been palatable to some, the Prime Minister would have reiterated earlier, it is undeniable that we have achieved great success with the mitigation and control of the spread of SARS-CoV-2 due to the number and nature of the emergency orders we have employed in country. Mr. Speaker, our response during the first and second wave provide good examples as to how we decrease new cases, hospitalization, deaths, after the implementations of measures to limit activities, actions, and events that fuel person-to-person transmission of the virus. Mr. Speaker, we are not alone with good success and deepening challenge, due in great part to the changing dynamics of variants that have emerged. And again, the Prime Minister spoke to this. Public health specialists warn that this global crisis may worsen if we do not arrest the spread of this virus through vaccinations and strict adherence to public health measures such as mask wearing, physical distancing, and sanitation. These measures, simple measures, have been proven to save lives and livelihoods. Mr. Speaker, our COVID-19 response follows, as the Prime Minister would have said, both our national and international professionals, the global model of 4 pillars aimed at reducing exposure. First, countering misinformation and disinformation. Second, suppressing transmission. Third, protecting the vulnerable. And fourth, saving lives and reducing COVID-19 mortality and morbidity. Focusing on the second pillar, Mr. Speaker, suppressing the transmission of COVID-19, my ministry has supported the detection and testing of close to 15,800 suspected cases. We have traced over 30,000 contacts. We have investigated up to 1,500 clusters of COVID-19 and flagged high-risk events throughout the country. Mr. Speaker, our national response to COVID-19 infection spread has been robust and begins with our testing capacity. Our national testing capacity has expanded significantly since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. Testing capabilities in the public sector include Gene Expert machine, BioFire machine, Panther machine and technologies at the National Reference Lab and PMH. While South Beach Health Center and Grand Bahama Health Center also have the Gene Expert technology. Private sector testing capabilities, Mr. Speaker, are also expansive and robust. Mr. Speaker, these testing actions necessitate the indisputable input of contact tracers. The surveillance unit at our peak during the second wave employed a high of 80 contact tracers at any one point in time. The rebounding recovery and reopening of borders and the economy, coupled with resumption of previously halted health services, contributed to the ebb of contact tracers available for detecting, tracing, and investigating as those who volunteered and were seconded from various ministries returned to their respective places. My ministry has moved to ensure that the ebb and flow of available contact tracers is remedied. The Ministry of Health has engaged a long-term and sustainable surveillance unit by hiring some 40 full-time contact tracers to complement the existing pool to support our COVID-19 response. Future outbreaks and ongoing infectious disease surveillance, such as tuberculosis, TB, HIV, and any other potential pathogen in future. Mr. Speaker, as previously communicated to the public, a 4,600 square foot facility has been secured to house the contact tracing surveillance operation. A scope of works to retrofit the facility is underway to facilitate occupancy by late September 2021. In the interim, the unit is being housed at a building in the Palmdale area and in the Western District of New Providence. Mr. Speaker, the ministry expresses unfettered appreciation to every individual who, over the course of the pandemic in this country, volunteered during our national contact tracing efforts. To our committed surveillance team that works so hard to ensure that our Bahamas is safe from pathogens, I acknowledge and appreciate each of you. Mr. Speaker, bolstering leadership and guidance has been required throughout the course of the COVID-19 pandemic. To supplement our contact tracing, and with the support of the Pan American Health Organization, we have further augmented the leadership of the COVID-19 response in the Bahamas through the engagement of a medical epidemiologist on a contractual basis for 6 months in the first instance. Mr. Speaker, all viruses change over time, and these changes at times may have little or no impact on the virus's properties. Some changes, however, may affect the virus property, such as how easily it spreads, the associated disease severity, or the performance of vaccines, therapeutic medicines, diagnostic tools, or other public health and social measures. Mr. Speaker, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, the Delta variant, was first reported in July of 2020 and was subsequently designated as a variant of concern, demonstrating increased transmissibility and disease severity. In a recent PAHO update on variants, it is noted that in just 13 months, Mr. Speaker, 13 months, the Delta variant has been reported in 135 countries globally. 24 of those countries and territories are in the Americas. Since April 2021, a global exponential increase in variants of concern, Delta samples have been observed. In July 2021, a global predominance of the variant of concern Delta was observed in almost 90% of the samples worldwide. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas National Reference Lab has continued its screening for mutations and variants in COVID-19 positive samples and continue to identify mutations suggestive of variants. Capacity for definitively sequencing of these samples to determine which variant is not available in country, but stay tuned, Bahamas, stay tuned. However, an additional 100 samples spanning the period May to July have been sent to the Fiocruz, Brazil laboratory for genomic sequencing. While we await results, the surge in new cases and hospitalization, which occurred beginning 4 weeks ago, and the increase in new cases over the 4-week period of 140% far outpaced the increase of the 4-week period leading into the second wave, Mr. Speaker, which was just some 48%. This suggests, Mr. Speaker, that perhaps we are experiencing something different in country. In response to such, on the recommendation of our health professionals, this government have put in place additional measures to minimize further spread of the virus. We are monitoring to determine whether these measures will realize the downward trend in the indicators which signal containment of this virus. And while we monitor, Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister has said, we will vaccinate. Mr. Speaker, at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, bed capacity for the care of COVID-19 patients was challenging and necessitated the additions of the legacy unit and conversions of some beds at PMH to manage the infected. The South Beach Health Center was repurposed to add capacity for COVID-19 care. And through a partnership with Doctors Hospital, we have use of the West facility. These added an additional 100 bed capacity. Mr. Speaker, while not perfect, this expanded capacity served us well until the recent surge where we are now experiencing a greater number of hospitalizations. This, Mr. Speaker, is no time to relax. All COVID-19 care facilities are currently experiencing a sustained and increased demand for COVID beds. While this is a statistics we wish to reverse, our response to the need is something that can be touched and felt. Mr. Speaker, we have already expanded bed capacity through the additional negative pressure tent, which was provided by the further generosity of the Samaritan's Purse. By the end of the week, early next week, 13 additional beds will be available at Princess Margaret Hospital and Mayo Surgical. And Mr. Speaker, in 2 weeks, 15 beds, 2 isolation rooms, and 2 observation rooms will come on stream in the old operating theater to assist the PMH hospital to meet this increasing demand for bed space. Mr. Speaker, during the period of April 2021 to July 2021, the number of COVID-19 beds expanded by some 31 new beds for a total improved capacity of 131 beds in country today. Mr. Speaker, we went from 38 COVID beds at PMH to 57. These are distributed throughout the facility as follows. The legacy unit has 8 beds. The maternity wards, 4 beds. The special pathogens unit, 45 beds. Mr. Speaker, we also have 10 beds at South Beach Health Center, 23 at Duran, 11 at Doctors Hospital East, and 30, Mr. Speaker, Doctors Hospital West. Of the 131 COVID-19 beds available in country, 107 beds have the requisite staff to care for the patients assigned to those beds. We are currently alleviating this shortage circumstance. Mr. Speaker, while the bed capacity is one side of the coin, Mr. Speaker, we are hiring persons. And Mr. Speaker, in short, our manpower challenges, we are addressing it by hiring nurses and doctors. Mr. Speaker, to alleviate the vexing challenge, in June, we brought on 36 nurse interns who were added to the staff of PHA with the assistance in augmenting the clinical care. An additional 30 nurse interns are scheduled for next month's September, pending successful completion of the University of the Bahamas examination. We are also finalizing this month, Mr. Speaker, the addition of 33 clinical nurses who are completing their program at UB, scheduled for this month of August. So all in total, Mr. Speaker, we're looking to have over 100 nurses by the end of September. Mr. Speaker, we have gone further. We have now approved the engagement of 65 registered nurses, 20 trained clinical nurses, 17 patient care assistants, 10 porters by the Public Hospital Authority for deployment throughout its facility at an initial cost of $3.9 million. Mr. Speaker, we are also exploring additional nursing support through NGOs and avenues on record of those who supported us during the post-Hurricane Dorian season. Mr. Speaker, we have added more doctors to our healthcare team. I remind this House that during the final quarter of last year, we hired some 30 new senior House officers, doctors, to bolster the staff complement in PHA and the Department of Public Health. In addition, this month, we have hired 34 senior House officers and 42 new house interns, all doctors, at an initial cost of some $4 million to augment care capacity across the Public Hospital Authority and Department of Public Health. This current administration, Mr. Speaker, has made the hard choices to prioritize health and well-being. The government continued investment in infrastructure, technology, and human resources has been the hallmark of our COVID response. On Wednesday, the 4th of August, 2021, the government of the Bahamas started fulfilling its honorarium promise, Mr. Speaker. This exercise was originally intended to honor healthcare workers who came forward to manage COVID-19 patients during the first wave, when others were reluctant or flatly refused to do so. There were 143 heroes and sheroes who fit this bill. Recognizing that the pandemic lasted longer than any of us would have imagined back in March of 2020, and appreciating that the other categories of staff made contribution to the successes of our first and second wave, the government decided on a fixed quantum of funds to be distributed to an additional 1,768 officers. At the conclusion of this exercise, some $3 million would have been paid out. And let me again, on behalf of a grateful government and people, express our appreciation to the hard-pressed healthcare workers who continue to demonstrate medical excellence in the face of this COVID challenge. Mr. Speaker, as a part of the initial incentive, we offered a death benefit to healthcare workers who potentially may have lost their lives battling COVID-19. In this regard, checks have been prepared to issue a death benefit to the families of 2 courageous souls who lost their lives as a result of working with infected patients. The presentation of these checks is planned for this Friday, the 13th of August, 2021, in the conference room of the Ministry of Health. 2 other families who lost their loved ones battling COVID-19 will be issued checks at a later date when all legal matters of those families have been satisfied. Mr. Speaker, the age distribution for us with COVID is a little concerning. But Mr. Speaker, we know that human beings have benefited from vaccinations. For more than 2 centuries, beginning with Edward Jenner's creation of the world's first vaccine for smallpox in the 1790s, there's overwhelming scientific consensus that vaccines are a very safe and effective way to fight and eradicate infectious disease. During the 19th century, vaccines were developed for rabies, tetanus, typhoid fever, and bubonic plague. And in the 20th century for tuberculosis, diphtheria, scarlet fever, pertussis, whooping cough, yellow fever, measles, mumps, rubella, chicken pox, and the list goes on. Most recently in the 21st century, vaccines were developed for HPV, dengue fever, Ebola, and now COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, vaccines have conquered infectious disease and saved lives longer than many of us has been on this earth. The process for vaccine development and getting vaccines to market is tried and true. No steps were bypassed or eliminated in making the COVID vaccines now being used to conquer SARS-CoV-2. In a pandemic such as we are in, increasing resources, enhance collaboration across global vaccine makers, and utilize multiple technologies, all previously used to provide life-saving vaccines or medication, sped up the process. But I repeat, no steps were bypassed or omitted. These vaccines we have are safe and effective. Mr. Speaker, as anticipated, Mr. Speaker, if I can have 5 minutes, I would greatly appreciate it, sir.
Right.
To finish, I have another 4 pages. Because I will wrap up as well, Mr. Speaker. As anticipated, the Food and Drug Administration of the United States, Mr. Speaker, is very close to approving these vaccines, Mr. Speaker. Currently in the Bahamas, we have over 111,000 persons who have taken the vaccine thus far, with about 48,000 who are fully vaccinated and 63,000 who have had at least 1 dose of the vaccine. Mr. Speaker, having obtained 20,000 doses of AstraZeneca vaccination, Mr. Speaker, vaccines from India, and followed by first and second tranches of 33,600 AstraZeneca vaccine through the COVAX, we are well on our way. And Mr. Speaker, as was spoken of earlier, the Prime Minister had indicated that we are going to receive some 397,000 doses of Pfizer via donation from the United States. Mr. Speaker, we have followed 4 tracks in regards to obtaining vaccines. The country would know that back in September of last year, we were among the first countries on the globe, Mr. Speaker, to put down a down payment of some $250,000 to put ourselves first in line in the chute through the COVAX facility to obtain vaccines through the WHO, even before vaccines were authorized and approved. So the Bahamas was first in line in the chute, having made our payment. Mr. Speaker, through that facility, that first facility, we received the first tranche of vaccines back in March. We received another tranche of vaccines in May. We were expecting to receive another 33,000 doses at the end of June. In June, Mr. Speaker, as you know, we received that about 2 weeks ago, the 33,600 dose. But at no point in time, Mr. Speaker, did we suspend our vaccination campaign. We were in receipt of some vaccines, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the government of Antigua and Barbuda, also the British High Commissioner who assisted us with vaccines from Montserrat and Anguilla. And that was, Mr. Speaker, our first track. The second track, Mr. Speaker, was negotiating with the United States to be able to obtain vaccines through the US. And as you could see, Mr. Speaker, from what was reported by the Prime Minister this morning, we will be receiving tomorrow at 1:30 on the tarmac at Linden, Finland Airport, 128,000 doses of Pfizer. Mr. Speaker, we will receive another tranche of the Pfizer vaccine via that route in September, and we will receive another tranche in October to total the 397,000. And that's the second track, Mr. Speaker, of how the government has been working to receive vaccine. The other track, Mr. Speaker, is that we have worked with the CARICOM and Africa had come together, Mr. Speaker, to increase our buying power, to approach global manufacturers. The Bahamas was a part of that. And Mr. Speaker, as I announced to the nation yesterday, the Bahamas will be receiving at the end of this month, in addition to what we will be receiving tomorrow, some 38,800 doses of Johnson & Johnson vaccine to assist our complement. So by the end of the month, Mr. Speaker, we will have AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson available to the Bahamian people. And Mr. Speaker, I will wrap up a little bit later on. But Mr. Speaker, let me just say that as was said by Pastor Dave Burrows this morning, that this administration has done all necessary to stand. And Mr. Speaker, based on that positive, robust, audacious message that the Prime Minister gave this morning, we know that we will stand.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following resolution be agreed. Whereas pursuant to Article 29, subsection 1 of the Constitution, the Governor General may make a proclamation of emergency declaring that a state of emergency or public emergency exists in the Bahamas for the purpose of that article. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this House A approves the continuance in force of the proclamation made on the 14th day of May 2021 until the 13th day of November 2021. B, affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Regulations 2021 made on the 14th day of May 2021 until the 13th day of November 2021. C, affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Number 2 Order 2021, made on the 22nd day of June 2021 until the 13th day of November 2021. And D, affirms the continuance and effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Special Provisions Order 2021, made on the 16th day of May 2021 until the 13th day of November 2021. As many, Chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Southern Shores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that the business of the House suspends for the luncheon break and return at 3 p.m. today's date.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the business of this House suspends until 3 p.m. this afternoon. As many members that are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The business of this House stands suspended until 3 p.m. this afternoon.